My name is Arjun and I live in Chicago, a city that never sleeps, much like the pain I carried for years. People looked at my life and thought I had it all. A stable job as an architect, a beautiful home, and a wife, Mira, whom I loved deeply for over a decade. But appearances can be deceiving. Beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect marriage, cracks had formed. Cracks I chose to ignore until it was too late. One day, I discovered the truth about Mira. What she did shattered me to my core. But this isn't just a story about her betrayal. It's about how I chose to rise above it. For years, I poured everything I had into my career as an architect. I worked long hours designing skyscrapers that touched the clouds. But when I came home, I found myself living in silence. Mira and I used to talk for hours about everything. Our dreams, fears, and even the mundane details of our days. But lately, those conversations had dwindled to almost nothing. She started coming home later, always with some excuse about work trips or meetings. At first, I told myself it was normal. Everyone gets busy, right? But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. There were nights when I'd wait up for her, only for her to brush past me as if I were invisible. I didn't blame her, at least not at first. Work can be exhausting, and maybe she just needed space. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just stress. This was something else. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Then one evening, as I sat in the dim light of our kitchen sipping cold coffee, I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. The emptiness I felt wasn't just in our home. It was in our marriage. That night, I confronted Mira. She stepped inside, said nothing, and started undressing, treating me like I was invisible. I sat there silently, the unease growing stronger inside me. Finally, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I gently set my coffee cup down on the table, my heart heavy like a stone. "Mira," I called out, my voice calm but firm. She paused, turned to look at me, not surprised in the slightest. "What's going on?" she asked, her gaze neutral, as if we'd never been close enough to worry about each other. I tried to keep my tone light, not letting my emotions take over. But this was the question I'd been avoiding for so long. "I know you're cheating on me," I said, not angrily, but with painful realization. "And I suspect this has been going on for a long time." Mira's eyes widened slightly, a forced smile flickering across her face. But it wasn't a smile of relief. It was the smile of someone who fears being caught. "You're starting this again," she sighed, her voice light, trying to deny what I had just said. "Arjun, you know how busy my work is. What's going on with you? Can't you accept that sometimes I have necessary meetings?" I shook my head but didn't say anything. Mira never understood how I felt. "You say I can't accept it, but that's not the issue," I said, my voice steady, though my eyes betrayed my disappointment. "You come home late, then have vague work trips. I'm not an idiot, Mira. I know you're lying to me." She stood there, silent, not responding, not angry. She just looked at me, her gaze tired, as though she'd heard enough of my accusations. "Why can't you understand? I have needs, Arjun. For years, you haven't been able to satisfy me physically, and I need something else. So you're saying I'm not good enough as your husband?" I clenched my jaw, trying not to let my emotions get the best of me. "Am I just some emotionless machine unable to fulfill you?" She pressed her lips together but didn't answer right away. Instead, a sharp reply came from her mouth. "I'm not saying that, but you don't understand my needs. We haven't been the same for a long time." Her words cut through me like a knife. But instead of becoming angry, I felt hollow. The things she said, the justifications, none of it could stop me from feeling the betrayal. After that confrontation, I knew I couldn't just let things slide. Mira had betrayed me, not just once, but repeatedly. And while she cried and apologized, I realized that sorry wasn't enough. Words don't undo actions. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started gathering evidence, messages, call logs, even photos. Every time she went out, I followed her discreetly. It wasn't about obsession. It was about clarity. I needed to know the full extent of what she'd done. Each piece of evidence felt like a weight being lifted off my shoulders. The more I uncovered, the calmer I became. Mira continued living as if nothing had changed. She met with her lovers, laughing and smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. But I saw through her act. I knew who she really was now, a person who had stopped seeing me as her partner long ago. One evening, after trailing her to a cafe where she met one of her lovers, I sat in my car replaying everything in my mind. The anger I once felt was gone, replaced by a strange sense of calm. This wasn't about revenge. It was about making her face the truth. That night, when Mira returned home, I was ready. I had spent hours preparing for this moment, rehearsing what I would say. I wanted her to understand the gravity of her actions, not just for my sake, but for hers too. She walked in, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "Arjun," she said softly, sensing something was off. "Sit down, Mira," I replied, my voice steady. She hesitated but complied, her eyes darting nervously around the room. I opened my laptop and played the video I had compiled. The dates, the kisses, the lies, all laid bare on the screen. Her face turned pale as she watched, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Arjun, please," she begged, her voice trembling. "I don't need your explanations anymore," I interrupted, my tone cold. "You thought you could keep deceiving me forever? Well, here's the truth. All of it." She tried to speak, to justify herself, but I stopped her. "It's over, Mira. You crossed every line I could forgive. I can't live in a marriage built on lies anymore." For the first time, she looked truly broken. Her defenses crumbled, leaving behind only regret. But regret doesn't fix betrayal. "I still love you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Love isn't enough," I responded. "Not when it's accompanied by disrespect and deceit." After that night, Mira moved out. The house felt eerily quiet without her, but it wasn't sadness I felt. It was relief. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely. I began rediscovering myself. I reconnected with old friends, picked up hobbies I had abandoned, and threw myself into work with renewed passion. Each day brought a little more light into my life. The empty spaces in the house reminded me of what I had lost, but they also symbolized freedom. Freedom from the pain, the lies, the constant questioning of my worth. Looking back, I realized that forgiveness isn't always the answer. Sometimes moving forward means letting go not just of the person but of the idea of what could have been. And so, I chose to live for myself. Not for Mira, not for anyone else. Just me. After Mira moved out, I didn't hear from her for weeks. At first, the silence felt like a relief. No more excuses, no more lies. But as days turned into months, questions began to creep into my mind. What was she doing now? Did she regret what she had done? Or had she simply moved on without a second thought? One evening, about 3 months after our separation, I received an unexpected call. It was Mira. Her voice sounded different, softer, almost fragile. "Arjun," she said hesitantly, "can we meet? Just once. There's something I need to tell you." I agreed reluctantly, not because I wanted to see her, but because I needed answers. We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place we used to visit when things were still good between us. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. For the first time, she didn't seem like the confident woman I once knew. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she began, her hands trembling around the coffee cup. "And I owe you an explanation." She paused, gathering her thoughts before continuing. "When I cheated, it wasn't just about you or us. It was about me. I was lost, Arjun. I felt trapped in a life I didn't recognize anymore. The loneliness, it consumed me. But that's no excuse for what I did. I hurt you in ways I can never undo, and I'll carry that guilt forever." Her words caught me off guard. This wasn't the defensive, justifying Mira I'd confronted months ago. This was someone who seemed genuinely broken. "I tried to move on," she admitted, her voice cracking. "But every relationship I started ended the same way. They all saw through me. They could tell I wasn't whole. And honestly, I don't blame them. I don't even recognize myself anymore. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity. But then I remembered the pain she'd caused, the nights I'd spent questioning my worth, the trust I'd struggled to rebuild. Pity wasn't enough to erase that. "What do you want from me, Mira?" I asked, my tone calm but firm. "Nothing," she replied quickly. "I don't expect forgiveness. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry, truly sorry. Not because I think it'll fix anything, but because you deserve to hear it." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of unspoken emotions hanging heavy in the air. Finally, she stood up, giving me a weak smile. "Take care of yourself, Arjun. You deserve happiness." As she walked away, I realized this was the closure I hadn't known I needed. Mira wasn't the same person she'd been during our marriage, and neither was I. Watching her leave, I felt no anger, no resentment, just peace. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that Mira had left Chicago. She'd taken a job in another city, hoping to start fresh. Some said she was seeing someone new, a man who seemed patient and kind, but others claimed she was still struggling to find herself. Either way, I hope she found whatever it was she was looking for. Her apology didn't change the past, but it gave me clarity. Mira's betrayal wasn't just about me. It was a reflection of her own struggles, her own pain. Understanding that didn't make it hurt less, but it helped me let go. Forgiveness wasn't necessary. Moving forward was.